welcome to a Bergkamp Wonderland podcast. I'm Gooner Gimli, and tonight I'll be joined by... First up, with his face like a disgruntled radish, it's Danny the GFP. Hello, Danny.
You dirty little scrub. Where have you been for 3 weeks?
Oh, health problems.
Yeah, you've been on the run from the midget police.
No, I haven't.
You have. They said, where's your leader? You went all bloody Almijita, or whatever. Almijita.
On a serious note, I could have died.
You could have died from twattism.
Fair enough, you're not the first to say it.
Oy.
Next up, fresh from his latest podcast bout, it's Don Daddy Geoff Arsenal. Hello, Geoff.
Hey, hello, Gim. How you doing?
Oh, I can't see no bruises on you. You came off that one fairly unscathed, didn't you?
Joking, mate. It was an absolute walkover.
Child's play.
Fighting fit for tonight. You can hear it in my voice. So where have you been, mate? It's incredible. We've missed you so much.
Oh, thank you. But I think FK did a fantastic job in my absence.
I thought he was better than you.
And while we've been away, I've missed out on the last few nights of these live podcast things. What is that all about?
Oh, it's a thing of beauty, Geoff. It just shows that we can talk football without loads of editing and notes and all that lot. So we've got our very own radio that we do half hour after every single game this season. We're doing it half hour after the game finishes, and you're welcome along, Geoff.
And do people listening, and do they not have, they haven't got a connection to talk or anything like that?
No, all you do is we give the link. It's broadcast live on YouTube, and you click on the link, and then you can go and listen in, and then there's a little menu at the side where people can type their questions. Most of the time it's Noob Gooner being rude to us, or Paul Swain and all those lot, and Dorkley and other Geoff. They're all there, and then they just type. We had 140 people listening for the first one.
Well, that's brilliant as well, because if there's anything anybody wants to ask you live, then you can see it on Twitter and call it out live on the show.
Yeah, I check the Twitter, and Chris usually checks the YouTube questions, and then someone else will check the Facebook questions, and then we just do it like that, and it's really, really good. But it's only instant reaction to the game. We do not do anything else that we do in the podcast.
No, so stay listening to this one for your weekly fix.
Yeah, this will still be the biggie.
We'll move on then. Next up, it's our Tinder-teasing financial analyst, Andrew. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Gim. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. How are you this week?
I'm good. I feel like I'm fucking pumped. I'm sat here. I've got my hat on. I've got my spit bucket. I've got my spit bucket for Geoff. I've got the water. I'm in the red corner, and I'm pumped. I'm throwing. I'm swinging in the air.
He's a cuts man, but he's just he's unemployed.
Of cocaine as well.
He's just waiting for the West Ham goalkeeper to turn up. Adrian.
It's just hashtag Team Geoff here in this corner, mate.
Hey.
Hashtag Team Geoff. And finally, it's our resident Aussie and injury specialist, Dom. Hello, Dom.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm barely conscious, but we'll push through.
4 a.m. Oh, you're a trooper. Or 4, nearly 5, isn't it now?
Oh, it's nearly 4:30.
Jesus.
God, Dom, you're an animal.
Not just in the bed.
We'll start, as always, by going straight over to Danny, who has all the Arsenal scores from across the board.
Right, 22nd of September, Arsenal under 21, 1, Newcastle United under 21, 2. Boo, hiss to them. Ormond Otwell in the 87th minute. That's all I'm going to say about that game. We were unlucky after a great run. We're now second in the league. The 20th of September, it was Arsenal under 18s 2, Reading under 18s 2. Stefan Mavidi got 2 goals, one including a penalty, so we're still top of that league. And he's got, I think, 7 goals in about 5 games at the moment. So we've got old Chuppa Apcom scoring for the under 21s and him scoring loads.
Akpom.
Whatever.
Akpom.
What do I say?
Apcom.
Oh,
Jesus. Always say Apcom.
It's taken me years to get over the Sanya thing. And then, he's just got some good young players coming through scoring goals. And then also on the 20th of September, Bristol Academy 3, Arsenal Ladies 4, Kelly Smith in a wilderness years got a hat-trick. It was a 16-minute hat-trick. Brilliant. Alex Scott scored the other goal, and they're now 4th in the league. Right, this week I've proofread Chris's little roundup of the Pirates, and we have to do the Pirates thing because we sponsor them, and so we are. It was in the small print. Did you read the small print, Gim? No.
No.
Nor did I. So he's done this. We've been done up like a kipper. Anyway, the Pirates were away on Sunday against young and energetic, that sounds a little bit pervy, Keyham Colts on the Devonport 3G pitch. Now, I don't know if he means that was reception-wise it's 3G, because if it is, it's so 2012. After a close defeat last week and a midweek draw, the spirits were high. Sadly, the run didn't continue. I know what's coming. The worst possible start for the Pirates. 2 early goals in the 3rd and 11th minutes set the tone. But on 35 minutes, a lifeline, a penalty. But somehow, their defender escaped a red card. Shitty refereeing, no doubt. And after a crude 2-footed tackle, that sounds vicious. I can see it in my head now. We were done. And then even our very own Jason would have winced at that vicious tackle, I'm sure. And he's not much he winces at, apart from his own reflection. Pirates boss, Carpenter, was irate. He's done that in capital letters with an exclamation mark, because that really means he was angry. More pain. Paul Miller's penalty was saved, and they scored a 3rd goal just before half-time. Bollocks. The second half was better possession-wise. They scored a 4th goal in the 60th minute and then killed the game off. The Pirates conceded in late 3 further goals in the closing minutes. No! Stop it! Titty ye not! The game ended 7-0 to them.
Is there a way that we can simulate a tumbleweed going across at this point?
Just my own tears. This week is a tough cup game against home to Kings Tamerton CA. Come on, ye Pirates. Now, I think that team that they're playing in the Cup with a team that won Division 1. This year, Chris's team are getting hammered by every team in Division 3. I think we could be talking triple figures here. Oh, no. The bigger the defeat, the more days Chris stays away from WhatsApp. And I'm his biggest supporter. I'm Carpenter in. Unlike that tit noob Gooner.
His game is a Bible, though, isn't he? Because, I mean, they've been beat every single game, been absolutely slapped all over the pitch. And he's still
doesn't give up
about it.
Yeah,
Right?
and the amount of shit, Welsh scumbag Jace gives him, unless I think Jace should get down there and play. When Jace gets his knees sorted, you watch out, Southwest, you're going to get ruined. The Welshman is coming. Right, that's me done.
I said I was going to get my football boots out and go down there for a week, and I was even going to bring the missus. I actually get a going goal as well.
Hey, I've got my eyes on that goal thing.
I think that our first discussion tonight is going to be the analysis of our 3-0 away win to Aston Villa. For his thoughts, I'll go straight to Andrew.
Yeah, I think it was it was a very good performance from the team. It was precisely, I think, what the doctor ordered after our kind of a very abysmal performance away to Dortmund. I think the team, what we needed to do was just very much take it back to the core basics. Strengthen around the middle, not let teams hit us on the break so much. And so to go away from home, to not concede, and to play with such vigour as we did against a team that, albeit Aston Villa aren't great, but they're obviously in form right now. It was obviously very inspiring. I think the fans obviously reacted very well to it. I guess the one player who I'd highlight from the game would be Danny Welbeck. I thought he was absolutely excellent on the weekend. I think obviously the 3 main things for me were probably his link-up play. Obviously that I think was pretty sublime. His off-the-ball movement was excellent. He was playing balls in behind. That through ball for Ozil for the second goal was, for the first goal, was brilliant. And then obviously he was, part of the architect in his first goal. I think his pace off the ball and his movement forward just gives us this extra dimension, which we see in the team, which Giroud doesn't necessarily give us. He's more of a strength from hold-up play. So, it really brings the best out of players like Rambo, Ozil, who are looking for someone who will drive the team forward and will move off the ball. And so, obviously we saw from that he was, he had this kind of electric pace where, he brought a lot of fear to the team from Villa. He was dragging their team out of position, which created space for players around him. And, he's an incredibly hard-working player. That's nothing to take away from Giroud because he's obviously also very hard-working. But I think, that, as I said before, the way in which Welbeck moved in behind, I think, the team just looked like we had this extra dimension up front. And, we I think at times last season when you took Theo Walcott out of the team and without that pace in behind and without those runners in behind, it kind of rendered a lot of Ozil's, quality through balls and his vision redundant at times. And so to have that kind of new, that diversity in personnel up front, it's really brought a new, it looks like it could certainly give a new lease of life to the way in which we attack. And so, once we've got Sanchez back and Walcott back, with Welbeck as our focal point, I'm pretty confident. I think I was one of the ones that when he did sign, I was kind of, a little bit lackluster, in the way I kind of approached it. Obviously, I was never going to go on his back because he's an Arsenal player and it's good to see. But I was, extremely impressed with his performance and just how that, really helped lift the players around him. I think overall we played pretty well. I think Arteta came back after a shocking game against Dortmund, and he put in a pretty good shift in midfield, and as did Ramsey. So yeah, definitely a lot more impressed with the way we played.
That's a very thorough analysis from you, Andrew. Geoff, we'll go to you next. And as Andrew touched on there, Danny Welbeck, a lot of us were very critical when he signed. I think even you yourself said that, we could have maybe done better with bringing people in. But it's nice to see the fans warming to him now. He's got his first goal, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. It's great. I was always concerned. You got to get that when you're playing up front. You've got to get that early goal to give you a little bit of a lift and give you a bit of confidence and gives you a little bit of a cushion just in case you don't score the next game. But it gives us that different option. We've got that. He's really busy. I love it the way he's busy all across the pitch, chasing down, and it gives us that option in behind where you can just slot a ball in, and he can run onto it, and he troubles defenders. So he's. I think he'll do well for Arsenal. He'll definitely score goals for Arsenal. But having said that, I think anyone could really score goals for Arsenal because we create so much generally. But how was Ozil? You saw the class in the man. His passing is different class, and when he set up. Welbeck, that pass was just on a plate for him. He just had to finish it, and the way he took his goal, he had plenty of pace when he ran away from the player. It was very calm and assured. And don't forget, he's been under a lot of pressure lately, and the way he passed the ball into the net was fantastic. And what I was most pleased about was we had our balance back. There was a lot more balance, and that's because Ramsey has dropped a lot. He's dropped a lot deeper. I think he prefers. Ramsey's one of those boys that he needs to be in the game all the time. He's got to be busy. He's got to be, involved in the match all over the pitch. And now he's deeper. He's facing the play. He can pick the ball up deep and he can run with it, or he can just knock it off and do what he's got to do. I think the balance all round is much better when Ramsey plays deeper and Ozil can just wander about and do what he likes to do. But overall, it took us about 10, 15 minutes to get in the game. But once we scored those three very, very quick goals, the game was more or less done, wasn't it? So it was very good.
And it seems like our fans have always got to be critical about something. Ozil, as we all know, had a fantastic game, probably man of the match. If he wasn't man of the match, Dom, a lot of people have said that Alexis Sanchez wasn't in the team and it allowed others to play better. Would you agree with that, or would you say that that's just the negativity of our fans coming through?
No, I think it's just the negativity. I think the most pleasing thing was Ozil being back at the number 10 role. The week before, he didn't look like he'd be able to get a kick in a street fight, so it was really good to be able to see him back in the middle of the park. I think that the formation seems to have been to accommodate Ramsey and Wilshere in the same team, and which pushes Ozil out onto the left. And people have said, but he's played out there for Germany and he's fine, and he can produce out there, but he drifts inside so much and picks up the ball in the middle of the pitch when he plays out there that he doesn't have any options out on the left to pass to, because that's where he should be. So I think he limits himself a little bit when he plays out on the left, and it's just, at least when he's in the number 10 role, he can go out on the left if he sees some space out on the left. He can go out onto the right if he sees some space out there. I don't think that Sanchez not playing really had much to do with anyone's performance, to be honest. I think he came in. Chamberlain was the one that came in for Sanchez, and they played in the exact same position anyway. So,
and there was confusion with the starting lineup as well, wasn't there? I think was it Sky or Arsenal produced a team sheet that had Alexis on it, and there was a load of other people who said that he wasn't playing, and there was and ahhing. Maybe people said he was injured and that's why he wasn't playing. Is there any one of us that can actually clear that up as to what it is? Was it just an error?
I think so, yeah. That's what I gathered, that Arsenal even tweeted a few minutes after the team sheet and said that, the Alexis is fine, it was just a mistake on the sheet, and that Chamberlain was always supposed to start.
It's just rotation, Kim. That's all it is. It's exactly what it is. We've got some very, very big games coming up. Chelsea and obviously that mob from up the road. So he's just rotating. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's a relief, because there was an air of uncertainty in and around Twitter that day, but it's nice to clear that up. We'll bring back then a very popular part of our show, which a lot of people have asked for over the past couple of weeks, which is Ozil Watch. Danny, you have some stats for us, don't you?
Yes, I do indeed. I was just going to say that I haven't really got much to say about the Villa game. Not that you asked me, but I've forgotten all about it. But I thought the that Ramsey, people are giving Ramsey a lot of grief because he's not doing what he did last season. But you look at all 3 goals we scored against Villa, Ramsey was involved in the build-up, whether he got the second assist or the third assist. If you track back the play of each of those goals, he was instrumental in all of those goals, and I think people need to remember that. Do we want one player kicking arse and scoring all the goals and being the central part of the team, or do we want everybody working in the team as a whole and making the team do well? So I think that's what I'd rather have. So I think people need to lay off of Ramsey, much like everyone gave Wiltshire grief last season. We want everybody to play as a team. We don't want one person sticking out as our star player, because when the star player goes down, then we're knackered.
This is Ozil Watch.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about Ramsey in the game.
Oh, Jesus.
You didn't ask me what did I think about the Villa game, did you shitbag?
No, I was just get with the programme, dickhead. I said Ozil Watch.
I know, I've got it right here in front of me, but then I said, as you didn't ask me about what I thought about the Villa game...
Get on with it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, right, Ozil, pass accuracy, 92%. That's not bad. 88 touches, 2 shots on goal, 1 dribble, 1 tackle, match rating 8.4, which is fantastic considering his match rating on the left-hand side when he played against Dortmund. I think he got a 5.5, which just shows what everyone was saying, that he's got to play in the middle, whether it be as an attacking midfielder, central midfielder, or in the Bergkamp hole. Either way, he's got to play in the middle, not out wide.
No, sorry, I don't want to jump in and be rude, but obviously I'm not a qualified accountant. But obviously, we completed 741 passes on the weekend. I think it's the most by any team in over 2 years. I think there's no coincidence by putting Ozil back in that number 10 role and playing the 4-2-3-1 with some pace up top and Ramsey in the kind of pivot role. It's just absolutely quality. So.
But how many of those were Arteta going left and right? That's what I want to know. Doing the crab stuff, doing the old Ray Wilkins job.
Another one of those stats was Arsenal had 71.4 of the overall possession.
Which is absolutely amazing that a Premier League team can have that much possession.
Especially when Villa last week, didn't they beat Liverpool as well?
Yeah, they beat them 1-0.
So it's fair to say that they went into the game with their heads held fairly high, and it took about 6 minutes to destroy them. I know that's very complacent to sit here and say that. However, I felt that just the way we set up for the game, the way we played. I mean, I've got stats here from BBC, and it said Arsenal total passes 814 to Villa's 312. I mean, just the stats are just, you'd think it was Arsenal playing a League Two team.
But you have to take into consideration the fact that there was a bug in the camp, that Andreas Weimann went off at half-time. He was throwing up in the tunnel. They had 3 other players withdraw from the game that were meant to be playing. We had the shitty bum like Darren Bent. He had a shitty bum. And so you had to take in the fact that there was a bug going through the match. Guzan felt shit the whole time, and it was a very... I mean, none of us thought we'd go there and spank them 3-0, and I think them being ill has to be taken into consideration. But there again, some of our best games come against teams that have got the shits.
Yes,
lasagna.
Lasagna gate. We should also talk about the other results as well, because all in all, it was an absolutely fantastic weekend for us, with Chelsea and City drawing, Liverpool losing, Everton losing, United getting absolutely thumped, and of course the Spuds being handed their arse on a plate again.
Did you hear? Can I squeeze? Yeah. Did you hear about our very own Chris being trending on Twitter?
Yes, I did.
Do you want to tell the world?
No, because I don't remember.
So, he just put a tweet out saying that Man United have won 1 game in this lot, and Liverpool have got this amount of points. He said, but yet Arsenal unbeaten in the league all season, and something else like that. And he said, but yet the calamity is at Arsenal, not at those two. And it was retweeted about 400 or 500 times, and he's now famous, and he's gone off to Hollywood to make a film about it.
But carrying on, it was nice to see that all the teams around us.
Did you just poo-poo me?
No, I didn't poo-poo.
You just brushed over me as if I'm a meaningless stat person.
Well,
you know. I mean, the funniest of it all was Lampard when he scored. It was just hilarious, wasn't it? No, let's just talk about that and savour that moment for a minute.
Did you see Ivanovic look back at him as if to say, "What the fuck"?
Because fair play to Chelsea. There was obviously calling out his name and everything else and singing about him, and then I mean. It was incredible, the feeling they must have had when he scored the goal. It was unbelievable. You know what? And it's a shame he never got that second goal, because that would have been it. That would have definitely been it.
But did you see the way that he conducted himself? And I mean, I tweeted about it at the time, and I've never been Lampard's biggest fan. I've always thought the bloke to be a bit of a tit. But the way that he went over it, he clapped the fans at the end, both sets. He also, he didn't celebrate the goal. I think that there are a lot of players that can actually learn from that, looking at you, Van Persie.
But
He was a quality player, Lampard. Don't worry about that. Fantastic player, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but he was a great player.
I was listening to Talk Sport after, and some Chelsea fan come on nearly in tears, and he went, "Oh, I've never been so proud as a Chelsea fan when he scored the goal, and he's just such a quality player." And I thought, well, he scored a goal against you after saying that he would never play for another Premier League team, and then he's gone and scored against you, and then he'd be playing against you in the returning fixture, because the date that he's going to go off to MLS has been moved slightly, so it's now the end of January next year. So that means he can play against them at the Bridge, and I hope he scores a hat trick there, just to show what a tit he is. But for that bloke to say that's his proudest moment as a Chelsea fan when Lampard scored and didn't celebrate, I thought, you fucking mug.
He'll probably be joining City next week. You know what the fans are like. They change their allegiances every other week.
Well, they also bought Villa, didn't they, from Atletico Madrid. They got him, and they've sent him out to play in MLS. But Frankie Lampard should have gone, "I'm not playing against Chelsea. End of. No way. I'm not coming on. I'm not doing it." Plenty of people pull a sickie. I would have, if he'd have been such a Chelsea legend, he'd have said, "I'm not doing it. Not happening."
And what about the Titanic of Man United? I mean, that was superb, wasn't it?
God, they got Fatty on the bench, haven't they? Apparently, they were saying that who's the bloke who used to be the Rennie Mullenstein said that he doesn't rate Luke Shaw, and that Luke Shaw was bought before they'd agreed for Van Gaal to go there as manager, and that he doesn't rate him, and that he's not going to use him. And they're playing that Rojo, whose name I can't pronounce properly.
He was rubbish as well.
Centre back. They're playing him at left back rather than playing their £30-odd million at left back.
No, he's injured though, isn't he, Luke Shaw?
No, he's on the bench.
Yeah. No, he's just fat.
He was on the bench.
Yeah.
He's been told he's on the bench, hasn't he, until he loses weight.
But if you saw it, I mean, you see all of our fans moaning about our defence, and then you go and look at them. I mean, what's that Tyler Blackett all about? Jesus Christ! Did you see him just like it's like he got blown over?
The thing that made me laugh the most on the weekend was Alan Pardswat. He was celebrating like he just won the Champions League, but it was a 2-2 draw at home to Hull. Newcastle, what's going on at Newcastle? I mean, they got 19 points from 75 now, haven't they?
Whoever thought we'd see the day where Paul Konchesky would be back in the Premier League kicking arse, and he was against Man United.
Unbelievable.
The Liverpool legend, Konchesky.
We should move on then, and instead of doing the Southampton game afterwards, which is probably the doom and gloom of the podcast, I want to go over to Andrew next, who's going to give us some financial figures for this week and a few talking points about other various things financial. Andrew.
Basically every 6 months Arsenal publish their financial figures. It's a PLC business, so they have to. Obviously, these figures that have come out recently, which have made the headlines, have been kind of our end of year figures. So you have your end of year figures. Sorry to talk in layman's to people. Obviously, there's probably a lot of people who are out there with a lot more accounting qualifications listening than I am. I'm in banking, so it's far more sex, drugs, and rock and roll than what So basically,
we need is a chartered accountant to explain it to us, don't we?
Andrew,
I know a chart. Well, he says he's a chartered accountant, but I think he works at the checkout at Tesco. You know, my old mate Mo. Ironically, he works for. He's an accountant, and he works for Tesco. Can you believe that?
How are they getting on this week?
That's what I'm saying. Incredible, fantastic.
Andrew, you dropped your club card.
Right, let's all shut up and let Andrew get on with it. Go on.
Yeah, so basically, so this week Arsenal announced their financial results, which were, they were positive. I was just going to talk through them basically. So stop me if I'm rambling too much or if I bore you. But basically, we have kind of two main revenue streams at Arsenal. So you've got your core business revenue, which is everything related to basically football, and then we used to have, and we still do to a lesser extent, have like a property revenue stream. So if you break them down, you look at what's happened basically up till March 2014. Arsenal's core business, i.e. kind of match day, broadcasting, commercial, player loans, they all grew by about 23%. So they now make up basically about £298 million for the club, which is a lift of over about 56 million. That's an extremely substantial jump for the club, because that still doesn't include the 22 million which were additional on top of Nike, which we're going to get from Puma next year. So if you break that down, we can see things like our match day revenue has gone up by 8% to 100, to over 100 million now. So that's up by about 7.5 million, and a lot of that's probably down to we had the Emirates tournament the year before last, and we also had the games in the Champions League against Bayern at home, and then also in the FA Cup against Everton. We've seen our broadcasting has gone up, substantially to 120 million, so that's gone up by 40%, and that's our biggest income earner basically, and a lot of that's down to the new Premier League TV deal, and we're going to see that continue to increase with BT tendering further. And then also, I guess, the one that's lagging behind slightly, but is still on the up, is our commercial revenue. So that's gone up 24% to about 77, just above that million. And a lot of that's down to, we saw the first year of the new Emirates deal. So that's gone up by another £15 million a year on top of what they were previously paying us. And it's now the second highest sponsorship deal in Europe. And we also brought in lots of new sponsors last year, which was, credit to people like Adidas. I definitely can do a better job than him, because he brought in, Jean Richard, Europe Card, Gatorade, lots of big companies and sponsorship deals. So we've seen huge there. And then I guess if you start looking at our costs, things like our wage bill went up substantially, but a lot of that was down to Ozil. A lot of that was down to bringing in the British core. So our wage bill's actually gone up 12 million to 166 million. But the big thing for us, though, as a club, is what we focus on is trying to make sure that our wage bill never exceeds 60% of our revenue. And we've actually even though our wage bill's gone up this year, because our revenue's gone up so much higher, it means that, our turnover has gone up so much higher, it means that as a percentage of turnover, wages is lower. So that reduces the risk for the club, which is always good. Although other expenses has gone up just because things like, we've had to pay extra for match day staff. So basically our costs are now gone up to about 237 million. So they've gone up slightly, but because the revenue's gone up in core football, it's extremely impressive performance by the commercial team. Because it basically means we're no longer relying on having to sell players any longer, and we're no longer having to rely on our property values, to record profit. And this is kind of the strategy of the club, which Gazidis has, been outlining, for at least the last couple of years, the kind of the fan base, where he's always said, listen, I want turnover to be at about 300 million. And actually, if you include what we've made in turnover from property this year, we have actually surpassed the 300 million mark. Which is good. I mean, operating profits are up by the time you include things like depreciation. And we've also, as I said, we also made, a significantly less amount of turnover off of the property. So for us to then continue to make a higher level of profit, I think it is, as a real tip of the cap to people like Even and, Tom Fox, who's obviously now gone to Aston Villa. And I guess this basically means that our overall profit for the year after tax was 7.3 million, which was up 25% on last year. Which is, obviously, which is fantastic. Although, putting that into context against, say, Man United, for example, their turnover compared to ours is, about 435 million against our 300 million. And even though our wage bill is 48 million less than theirs, they still make, significantly more profit than what we do. So, I mean, there's still a lot of room, I think, for the club, but the figures are positive. I think, obviously, the big one, which everyone's been talking about this week, has been, the cash in the bank, which is kind of separate to the balance sheet. So what we've seen this week and what's caused a lot of controversy is that we have about £208 million sat in the bank. And obviously, there was a bit of a fiery debate on that last night between Mo and Geoff about, how much of that's actually available to spend. And I think what people are forgetting when they're getting carried away saying, we need, how have we not bought all these players when we've got 200 million? I mean, the reality is when we capture the financial figures in May, it's basically when all the money's coming from the season tickets. So that figure is going to be artificially inflated to the extent that, that money isn't available for spending on players. That money has to, include things like running costs throughout the season, player wages, the running costs of the stadium, infrastructure costs, all these sorts of things. And then also from that, we have to maintain a debt reserve of 35 million, just in case we don't make the Champions League, for example. And we need to obviously continue to pay our bondholders. And then there's also things, you have to consider, like we owe money, a lot of money still for Ozil. That was a lot of that was a credit payment, it seems. And then we don't always pay up front as well. So throughout the year, we're going to have to pay for things, like players we bought this summer. So realistically, you could say there's probably about 40, 45 million, maybe even 50 that we could spend in January comfortably to bring in that holding midfielder if we want one. And then I guess also the main thing to talk about is the debt. So the debt has now gone down to 240 million. We continue to pay 7 million off the debt basically every year, and then 12 million on interest, but that doesn't come off the debt. That's just something we have to pay, unfortunately, which is good because it means our net debt position. So basically, if you use the cash we've got, and if in theory we use the cash to pay off all the debt, our net debt position was only going to be 33 million now. Which means, next year, in theory, we could have a positive debt net position, which is very good for the club when they look at things like gearing ratios and, low risk ratios. And I think that's one thing that, we've seen talked about around Stan Kroenke recently and, whether, why they want to keep cash in the bank. Because for him, it allows his overall portfolio of investments to have a lower gearing ratio with a high cash bank reserve, basically, at Arsenal. I think there's been a lot of bashing over Arsenal over the course of the week. There's still definitely room to grow in the next year. I think we'll see a huge improvement in commercial revenue when we get the Puma money. I think we're still lagging behind. We're only 12th in Europe for commercial revenue, so we're behind teams like Schalke and Liverpool, who will overtake next year when we get the Puma money. But there's certainly, very encouraging signs to be taken from kind of the recent figures.
What do you think, Andrew, on the Kroenke taking out his £3 million?
It's one of those things where I think it's, there's been a lot of accusations being made this week, and so people have got to be, I think, a lot more careful than what they have been. A lot of people with public opinion. It's one of those things. So we've paid £3 million, haven't we, Geoff? I think, isn't it, in a strategic advisory fee? And realistically, it's a grey area in terms of
very spurious, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, in theory, you can pay these to your directors, and that's fine. The reality is, obviously, a lot of fans are questioning, and a lot of the accusations, we should say, are that he took this instead of paying a dividend, i.e., he decided to pay himself £3 million as the accusation, rather than splitting the profit up equally amongst the shareholders. And so, obviously, if we paid a dividend, I think a lot of what people are saying is, well, listen, Arsenal are a business, so it's fair. Fair is fair. You expect him to take a return, and I understand that. So what you'd say is, okay, if that is the case, then he should take a dividend because that if he is an investor in the club, then everyone who's invested money, it doesn't matter whether you've got one share or whether you've got 40,000 shares, everyone's invested money, and therefore everyone deserves, an equal amount of, return on the dollar to what they've invested, basically. And so if he did want to pay a dividend, I'd have no problem with that because, that's how a lot of business works. And, that's what Usmanov, I think, has been quite honest in saying, that he would, take a dividend from the club. And I think if they did take a dividend, they took even they took 25% of the profit, and then they split that between shareholders. Obviously, he's not going to get anywhere close to 3 million. But then at the same time, what we should clarify is, it's not guaranteed that this is some kind of shady payment. I know that there are people who are, adamant it is, but we do see, managing directors, CEOs, like shareholders do get paid these kind of advisory fees, and it's not something that is, as we said, it's a grey matter. So it could be that his, one of his other holding companies have given advice or given advisory services to Arsenal for 3 million. I think, it's obviously going to cause a lot of unrest with a lot of shareholders who probably feel it's not, and it's a dividend payment. So we're going to see, I think, maybe a backlash in October at the AGM, which will be interesting. But yeah, no, realistically, I would rather, if it is the case that, he did want some return from the club, I'd rather it was done in a dividend payment. Although, realistically, I don't think we can say either way whether it was, just siphoning money for his own benefit or whether there was actually like an added value service from one of his other companies. And, it's one of those things where how can you prove otherwise, really? I mean, what about you guys? What was your feelings on it?
I just think that this is going to end up snowballing. This year it's going to be X amount, then the next one is going to be even more, because didn't he say that in America they're used to that kind of increment in the prices every year, and he expects that from us. Then every year it's just going to be, I think, and I don't know because I'm not a chartered accountant, but every year it's just going to, if he gets away with it this time, he's going to get away with it next year for more money, and then more money, then where does it end up being a cash cow for him? Am I wrong there?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to think. But Dom, what do you think about the? I mean, it's obviously it's a bit coincidental. It's coincided with the 3% rise So people are thinking, that's what he's done. He's siphoned it out the back door, that 3%, and that 3% is naturally coming from the fans. What do you reckon about it, Dom?
I'm probably not that sort of cynical about it, putting two and two together and coming up with, I mean, it does seem like that, but I think people have to remember that this is a guy that owns a lot of different sporting teams and things throughout the US and in America. He's not going to come into a club like Arsenal if it doesn't make financial sense for him. He's a guy that's got oodles and oodles of money and a lot of investments, and it's just, I guess to me, I'm not surprised, is basically the best way to put it, is that, gone are the days, unfortunately, where you have people owning the club that love the club as much as you and I. It's much more of a statistical decision for these guys if they're going to come in and start deciding to sort of invest in the club. And I think it does set a bit of a precedence. I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, being in Australia, you're kind of detached from it a little bit. You don't get to see as much of the unrest as probably what you guys deal with being over there, but it's definitely not ideal. But at the same time, it's not surprising, is it?
No, I think not... Sorry, go on, Andrew.
No, I was going to say on that, yeah, I agree, Dom, that, if he did want to take some kind of, let's be honest, Kroenke hasn't actually put money into Arsenal Football Club. He's bought the shares outright. So he owns the kind of the money. He owns like the equity of Arsenal, and I can understand why he'd want to return on that equity relative to the profit it makes. But I think a lot of fans or a lot of people, maybe not so much those who believe in custodianship, but they'd be happy for some kind of owner in a kind of modern business to take some level of return. But I think at the same time, if it is and I must stress, I guess, if it is the case that he's taken this payment as a kind of something to substitute a dividend payment, then it's completely unfair, and he kind of smacks against the whole shareholder method on other shareholders who've equally put in their money. So Usmanov, for example, would equally deserve some kind of level of return on his investment, which he's not getting from this kind of payment method. And just because he has the most number of shares in Arsenal, he's not the outright owner. So everyone in theory should get depending as I said before, even if you've got one share, you should get some kind of return on that. And so if they were going to start going with this model, I think a lot of people would say fair play. But if they did it on a regulated fair way, if that makes sense.
So everybody got a little bit of the profits, and it was all spread out evenly, depending on how much of a stake in the club each investor owned.
Yeah, so if they say we're going to give, right, we're going to give 100% of the profit back to the shareholders, and you own 60% of the shares, and you get 60% of the profit. Basically, but you get a fair amount relative to how much you own or how many shares you've bought in the club. And I think a lot of people, that makes a lot of money. Obviously, that's a fair way of doing it. And it ensures that everyone who's invested in the club gets, the return that they deserve. And I know that, before they kind of said that Usmanov has always said, that's the kind of model he would go down, which is fair enough. He's honest about that. Whereas I think Kroenke's always, the Kroenke camp has always said, we're not going to take dividends. So I think that is why this is probably kind of, I think, blindsided so many people and caused a bit of outrage from those who kind of, believe that it wasn't for advisory fees.
No. Well, move it on from there with everything discussed. Andrew, I thank you for that. That was absolutely fantastic. Anyone thought you worked in finances, mate?
Well, I'm not a child accountant, so. But
you dabble. You dabble.
I've been there.
But we'll continue tonight's podcast by mulling over our Capital One Cup exit to Southampton on Tuesday night. To start us off, we'll go to Dom.
Bit disappointing, I guess, isn't it? I think the main thing for me, I guess I'm disappointed for, is you always want Arsenal to win every game they play. So I'm not one of those people that are saying, oh yeah, it's good that we're not in it anymore because it's a crap cup and we've got too many injuries. I think it's a trophy that we're not going to win at the end of the day, and those same people would be the same people that would be cheering if we did win it. So
exactly,
I think that the back four was probably my biggest concern going into the game as far as team lineup goes because of the injuries and things that we do have. So it was good to see some young kids get a start there. And I didn't get to catch all the game, but I have watched a fair few of the highlights packages and things since, and read up a few reviews and things. And it does sound like, unfortunately, it was the senior players that let us down, and not necessarily the young kids, which is a bit disappointing.
And before we break down the nitty-gritty of the game, I think a couple of things we should talk about is the attitude that was on Twitter afterwards, as in it's not really that decent a cup, we've got all these injuries, we can now focus on this. But for me, I think that's absolutely bollocks, to be honest with you, because I sat there and I was infuriated by the players that play poorly, i.e. Podolski and Rosicky. And I think when you go into any competition, you should always go out with a mentality of trying to win it. So to turn around, it just seems like it's a bit poor from our fans to just write us off from it, Geoff.
Well, it's difficult, but you've got to prioritise. And we're in 4 competitions, aren't we? And the League Cup is definitely the lowest of the priorities. You're right about Podolski and a few of the players. They didn't really look interested, did they? And you'd think that the more experienced players like that, they've got a chance to, they've got a chance of really trying to impress and getting a shirt for the next game. Podolski, he seems like a bit of a mascot, doesn't he? Like a social network mascot for Arsenal, because he's great on social networking, but he just don't seem to be interested when he gets out on the pitch, which is really, really disappointing. I think we're going to have to move him on, because eventually it'll go right across the dressing room. His bad attitude, if he's got a bad attitude, but if he's got a bad attitude on the pitch, then maybe he's got a bad attitude in training as well. I mean, I don't know for sure, but it seemed like he didn't really do a lot, did he? Walking about a lot, and
but
I was
I've not seen a
disappointed.
player that disinterested since Andre Arshavin.
Yeah. Well, I think he was nearly basically out the door, wasn't he? Before we had the saga
Juventus, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think he was out the door, and it must be difficult for him knowing that he was going to go, and then all of a sudden he's still at the club, and he knows he's not really going to play much football, especially now, when we've got knocked out of the League Cup, because they're definitely going to be one of those players that we're going to play most of the games, But with regards to the League Cup, it's the lesser of the evils, isn't it? If you're going to go out of a cup, I think the League Cup is the best one to go out of. I'd rather go on and try and win the FA Cup, and obviously prioritise the league and the Champions League. I mean, the defence, we had a very, very young defence. I was quite impressed with the young boys, as it happens. And do you know what? I was quite impressed with the Cock at left back, and he was quite, kept the ball very well. He was quite aggressive. He's got a good engine on him, and that loan away last year might have done him a bit of good. And you know what? If we get a little bit short a defensive midfield player, I think we should stick him in there and give him a little go, because he's aggressive. Hopefully he's perked up on his positional sense now, because that's what was his problem last year. It was his concentration, his positional play. The year before last, I beg your pardon. So I mean, that was quite positive, and Hayden did very, very well. Bellerini's got that pace. You see him get back a couple of times, didn't you? Back into position. But, it was okay. I was disappointed in the result. But, at the end of the day, it was a League Cup. It's not really the end of the world, Gim.
No. And, Andrew, we also saw another player coming in from the cold, so to speak. Abu Diaby played a part in the game, and I thought he did quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a qualified accountant, but he's a quality player, Abu Diaby, when he's fit. He's one of those, isn't he? He's almost become a luxury player for us now, just because he plays. He's such an aloof. He's almost an enigma in the squad. But he's one of those players. You can't help but feel so sorry for him, because he's on paper. His talent and his ability. It takes that game to a different level in some respects. You've seen the way that he's dominated big games against Liverpool away, especially a couple of years ago. He can be a real driving force of the team. I think he sometimes gets, unfairly labelled as this kind of lumbering, holding midfielder, but he's much more than that. He's the kind of player which will grab the game by the scruff of the neck in the final third, and he'll really penetrate the opposition. A little bit like Rosicky in that sense, that he's happy to press high up the field. He's a real menace, but he's also got this kind of real elegance about him on the ball. He's got flair and skill, and he's an absolute handful, and it's just. It's upsetting when you think, the player we could have had if he didn't have that horrific injury, which has kind of led to, a knock-on of injuries. And it's hard not to feel sorry for him in a way.
And Sorry, Andrew. Do you know that he's got so much stick against of Arsenal fans on Twitter and that they just have not stopped giving it to him, have they? And it's been so unfair on the lad. And I would love to see him come back. And because you see, like you said, he's so elegant. He's great on the ball. He keeps it nice and tidy. He's always seems to look. He's got a little bit of time on the ball, creates a bit of space for himself. And if he could keep fit, it would be great because you can get 4 or 5 years out of him, maybe.
But Geoff, do you think he could be the answer to our defensive midfield problems at the moment?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know whether you see him as a defensive midfield player. I think he's more, when he was playing, I think he's more of a box-to-box player, but he might be able to adapt because of his injuries. It would be nice, but I just think he's a broken man. I mean, Dom is going to be the man for that, isn't he? He's going to be the man to tell us whether or not he could come back or not. What do you think about it, Dom?
I'm sceptical, just because, like Andrew said, the initial injury to his ankle causes a lot of knock-on effect, and then he had the nasty ACL injury, going over 12 months now, and it does. It's one of those things that he's got two major injuries to joints that cause knock-on effects to other small injuries with soft tissue problems and things. And we've seen that already this year, where during the pre-season he played a couple of games, then he was out with a bit of a hip problem, then he come back, and then he's out a little bit with another thigh problem. And I think that's probably what we're likely to see. And that's the worrying thing when you get the soft tissue injuries reoccurring all the time from those big impact injuries. So, look, it's not impossible, but it's improbable.
Dom, was I right when I heard someone saying that because of all the operations that he's had on his leg, he's actually got one leg shorter than the other?
I think Danny told me that. I'm not sure. I've no idea, but it wouldn't surprise me with all the. It's probably more so the joints themselves don't have the same flexion and extension as what they should, and if you have an imbalance on one side over the other, so his ankle is the perfect example where his ankle. He can, straighten his foot and bend his foot one side more than the other, and if you're running around like that, that's when you're going to start getting. And you've got to remember these guys are doing so much volume of running as well that it's going to cause imbalances and cause issues. So one side of his body's copping a lot more strain than the other. So what's probably more likely to have happened is he's got more of a tilt in his pelvis to compensate from the lack of movement in his ankle, and that sort of causes this short, leg on one side more than the other, even though the legs are actually the same size. The imbalance comes from the hips. So hence why there's so many problems around his hips and his thighs and things when he gets these little soft tissue knocks.
And I feel we should pull you up on the other injuries that we've got throughout the squad. Of course, a big one came through this week, the actual announcement that Matthew Debussy would be out for 3 months. Can you give us any more on that? Because he said himself that it was a broken ligament. Can you give us any correct terms for what it is he's actually suffering with?
I could probably look up the ligament for you. It's probably tibialis, one of the tibialis ligaments, I'd imagine, with one of the with the angle of which his foot buckled underneath him. But basically, the major ligament on the outside of your ankle probably ruptured. I think Chris asked me as it happened, and that's what I said that I thought it was straight away. But yeah, it's not good. It's sort of 8 weeks in a boot after the operation where he's not able to move it much, and then he has to go through a lot of rehab process as well. And I've seen a lot of things on Twitter as well where we've been really unlucky with our ankle injuries this season, and someone even asked the question, has it got anything to do with is it preventable? Is it on the training pitch, or are we doing anything that we can do to prevent those types of injuries? And the answer to that's absolutely not. With Giroud's injury, with Debussy's injury, Arteta had an ankle, Ramsey had an ankle. Short of changing sports and playing bingo down at the old folks' home on a Wednesday night, you can't avoid those types of things. And even then, you could probably turn your ankle on one of the old ladies' walking frames anyway. But you can't avoid those impact injuries in playing football. The people are flying around, kicking each other, and it's going to happen. But to have one of those types of injuries in a season's unlucky. To have 2 in 2 weeks is ridiculous.
We'll try and go brain cell to brain cell on injuries. Can you give us any more about Monreal's situation as well?
Well, I'm not a qualified accountant, but I can probably give you a bit of a heads up on that one. He
if you could.
It is a tough one actually, because with Monreal's back injury, to be out for a month with a back problem is significant, because generally what I would imagine has happened is that he's got a problem with his disc, or a disc in his back that puts pressure on all the central nervous system. And what happens is once that disc starts to protrude, it pushes on the nerves, which causes the muscles to spasm around the area. So there's not necessarily an acute injury, so to speak, but what it does do is it's a chain reaction. It sets things off, and it's quite hard to settle down sometimes. So hence why he might be having to be out for a month doing some rehab to try to stop that disc and to get it back into place. Otherwise, it's just a process that keeps reoccurring. But it's definitely a little bit concerning, to be honest, the Monreal one. I'm not too sure what's going on there.
No, it's a little bit concerning in the sense that we've only got Gibbs really as a natural left back, and as we know from the past, he's not the most consistent when it comes to staying fit. But I'll push you on some more then. I think the final one, which the boys are talking about in the group below, is Walcott's injury being pushed back and him possibly returning in or around October 25th.
That's when I had him coming back. I said sort of late September, early October, he'd be pushing for first team training, and with an ACL injury like that, it's going to take you 2 to 3 weeks in first team training before you're even going to get a sniff at first team football. It's such a major injury. It's such a big thing to be out of the game for so long that it's not a little hamstring, a 2-3 week hamstring injury where you're back into first team training for a week and you're available for selection straight away. He's got to do a fair bit of extra work and really prove to the fitness staff that he's able to go in and play even 20 minutes at a high pace without ending up with those thigh injuries, the hamstring injuries, a calf, those types of problems. The actual knee itself is going to be fine. The actual ACL surgery would have probably healed after about 6 to 8 months. But it's then trying to condition the body to make sure that you don't have any of those knock-on effects. So he's not been set back, I don't think. There's been any setbacks in his rehabilitation at all. I think that's probably where you usually, as a rule of thumb, if it's a bad ACL where there might be some meniscus damage and some medial damage in some other ligaments, you could say 12 months. So he's well and truly in front of that anyway. But I think it's just that people just thought or assumed that he could be back for the start of the season. And then I know Arsene Wenger said that he'd be pushing for first team in the first team training the end of September. So I think people need to realise that it's a big injury to come back from, and it's not something that you come back from instantly. It's a really slow process to make sure that he's going to be okay.
And how do you think that Arsenal will manage the injury with him being integrated back into the first team? Do you reckon that they will play him, say, a first half or for 60 minutes? Or do you really think they're going to play him every other game to try and get him back up to fitness and give him the game time?
I think they'll probably play him in a couple of reserve games, to be honest. I think they might even put him in the reserves for 45 minutes and see how he goes. But a lot of it is how he pulls up after the game. I know that anyone that's played sport, you might run around and feel a bit of a knock and it's okay, but then the next day it really flares up. So he'll probably play a couple of reserve games, and once he gets back into playing for the first team, I think because we've got a lot of players in that position, Sanchez and Oxlade-Chamberlain can play out on the wings, that he's not going to need to be rushed back, which is a really, really good thing. So hopefully we can get the best out of him and manage it, that by the time, November, December comes around, that busy period through Christmas, hopefully he's nice and fit and he gives us a little bit of extra something through that period.
No. Thank you very much. I think unless you boys have got any more injury worries that you might have, or any players that I might have missed off, because it is a fairly big bloody list, fellas.
No, I was just thinking that with all the injuries we had last season and all the injuries that so many teams are getting nowadays, because the players are such finely tuned instruments, that it's just ridiculous to think that we have got so few players as backup. And I read yesterday that Per had a slight knock as well. I don't know if anyone's heard about that or whether it was just...
I heard something that he was... that's why he was on the bench.
Yeah, so
because normally he plays, doesn't he, in those games?
So yet another player who's going to be injured. So it just amazes me that everybody seemed to know it, apart from the Holy One himself, who is completely oblivious to it all.
It's bizarre that we're getting all these injuries, though, isn't it? It's just bizarre that Arsenal keep on getting these injuries at vital points, isn't it? Maybe we should go down to Tesco's and get one of them boys off the checkout and see if he can give them a run, because they're normally good, aren't they?
I know someone. He's fairly good with figures as well, but unfortunately not fact.
To be fair to Dom, I think we can give him a tick because he answered those questions. So well done, Dom. But also, one thing that was interesting just from the Arsenal accounts, going back to him, is that they said actually that they've invested quite a lot of money this year into sports science. So I don't know whether a lot of that is going to be looking at how we can use sports science to overcome these kind of, I guess, core tissue injuries that Dom's mentioning, and some of these more ankle injuries and lighter training injuries. So I think hopefully we're going to see something longer term coming from that. I know that they've certainly invested in strength and core conditioning coaches for their youth team, so that when they're in future years, when they start coming through, they're going to have a lot more natural strength around them, so they're going to be able to compete with the physicality and kind of the physicality needed to be a professional footballer. So hopefully we'll see those kind of issues addressed in the near future.
Talking about injuries, our very own friend of the pod, Aaron Farrell, sent a question in: what effect, if any, that Shad Forsyth has had on the clubs thus far? I'm struggling to see it, to be honest. Has he got a point there, or is it just unlucky?
I think it's a bit early, isn't it? Surely,
massively too early. We've got to remember that he was at the World Cup with Germany, and he was only around for probably 2 weeks of our pre-season, and that's where most of the strength and conditioning is going to take effect. That's where he's going to earn his dollars, is through the pre-season. Throughout the season, he's going to hopefully be able to do things like, fingers crossed, people like Kieran Gibbs with his recurring hamstring problems, to manage that, to change his training a little bit to hopefully overcome a lot of those types of issues. But the injuries that we've had, Debussy's injury, Monreal's injury, those Giroud's injury, are completely potluck. Like, it just doesn't seem to happen to other clubs where someone runs along and turns their ankle and breaks a ligament. That's just... Shad Forsyth can't do anything about that. And
could it be down to the
soft
pitch,
tissue,
Andrew? Because everyone knows that our pitch is the best in the league. I mean, it is like a bowling green. Could it be down to the quality of the pitch at all?
Sometimes. I mean, I know that Per Mertesacker in his first season turned his ankle at Stoke, stepped in a pothole there, but it can happen. But again, there's 20 Premier League sides all playing on each other's pitches every week, but it just seems to happen to us. I don't know. It's the soft tissue injuries are the ones that you can sort of look to Shad Forsyth to hopefully help and fix a little bit in the future. But these major ankle injuries and things that have left us a bit short at the back have got nothing to do with him at all.
Just to put some kind of emphasis on this, at the moment, Aston Villa, 9 injuries, but you got 6 of those with a case of the shits, and they've got 3 with actual proper injuries, one who's a leg break. Newcastle, 9 injuries, but one of those is unfortunately Gutierrez's cancer. Arsenal with 7, Liverpool with 7, Man United with 7, QPR with 6, Southampton with 6. So it does seem to be, and I haven't got time to go through them and add them all up, but it does seem to be ankle injury, thigh injury, pelvis injury, ankle ACL, ankle, knee, hamstring. All injuries all do seem to be much of a muchness. So I don't think we're like 15 injuries, whereas every other club has got 2 or 3. I think it is a more reoccurring problem with the pace and the physicality of modern football is just taking its toll a lot quicker than what it used to. I think the days of having an outfield player, and especially as you go through the midfield and up front, of them playing all 38 league games a season are long gone. Because back in the day, maybe a decade ago, 15 years ago, you'd regularly have 3 or 4 players that would play every game of the season and a few cup games. I mean, Geoff will know, back in the day, you used to get players playing 70 games a season, eh, Geoff?
Oh, incredible, mate. I think we've won the league with 14 players in the past,
Yeah, and plus they didn't used to cry off their injuries all the time, but like Don will probably agree that they weren't fine-tuned athletes, just about on the verge of pinging with the slightest touch because they're that finely tuned, eh, Dom?
Oh, not only that, but everyone's moving around so much faster as well. I've said this before, that the ligaments and tendons don't seem to change in size, but the athletes are.
Much like my good
and so
self.
They're putting a lot more strain through those areas when they're running around. But even then, getting a ball kicked into your foot and breaking the bottom of your tibia is just. It's baffling that it just seems to happen to us all the time. Some of these injuries are just a little bit like, you look around the league and you just look and you think it's not happening to other clubs. Like I said, one of those injuries in 12 months is a bit of crap luck, but you have Theo, Diaby, Debussy, Giroud with pretty major problems from all impact type work that it's just one of those one of those unfortunate things.
So so one day, Don, we hope that we're going to get a campaign up and you're going to be in charge of the fitness at Arsenal. At the moment, what would you do to try and sort this problem out, or do you think there's nothing much can really be done apart from walk under less ladders and have less black cats? No offence to my own cat, Betty, if you're listening.
I think it's a combination of different things that we have where, if we've got 70% of the possession, you've got 70% of the time people are trying to kick us. You got to remember that too, that the way that we play with our passing and moving in the high possession game, there's a lot more time on the ball where the opposition are flying at us trying to press and take the ball away from us. And not only that, I think that the athletes that we have at Arsenal, it wouldn't hurt to get a couple of bigger bodies in there. I'm not talking, huge big lumps that go around kicking people, but just some bigger, stronger bodies to give those positions like Arteta and stuff a bit of a rest. Or, people say, Diaby's not a defensive midfielder. I know Geoff brought that up before, but neither's Arteta. And he's sort of adapted to play there. I think that Diaby could do a job there probably better than what Arteta has.
I think that what you said there, Dom, about the way in which we've adapted I mean, I haven't got any qualifications in counting fouls, but I'm sure that the way in which we play now and the way in which we have, as you said, we play a lot more of a possession game. We do open ourselves up to being kicked. But maybe, I guess, with us being, getting so many injuries and kind of the knock-on effect I think it has on the success of our season, perhaps what we could do is start our own protest. And until the club sorts out the players and stops them getting injured, we won't buy from the club shop, and we can call it "You Mend, We Spend." So
I like it.
I like that. It sounds very good. Every little helps, that. Every little helps.
It's proactive communication. So
one thing that I still can't get my head around is not having the defensive cover. At the very, very least, another decent, experienced centre back, that would make a big, big difference, because you're going to have a situation now with, even on the weekend, Koscielny wasn't in the squad and Mertesacker had a knock and he was on the bench. So it makes you wonder how knackered Koscielny was that he wasn't able to take the bench spot. So little things like that as well, where you're expecting a lot from Koscielny and Mertesacker, and they're probably playing through little knocks and little injuries because we don't really have much choice. Whereas if you had a little bit more cover, you can comfortably give Mertesacker a little bit of rest when he needs it against, maybe not so much against a Tottenham or a Chelsea, but maybe even midweek in Champions League, you could bring on somebody else to give him a bit of a rest. So that's definitely something that's not going to help our cause at all.
On the defensive side, I was looking yesterday for that previous podcast that I did, and I noticed that Chelsea have only got 5 defenders, Liverpool have got 7 defenders, City have got 8, Spurs have got 7. So everyone seems to be in a similar type of position where they're not overrun with. I mean, Chelsea surprisingly with only 5 defenders, recognised defenders. So that's surprising. Yeah, we'll just have to see how we get on with it, isn't it? Really.
Were you counting Kolo Touré as a full defender?
For Liverpool, I was, yeah. Kolo Touré and Luis Enrique. Is it Luis Enrique? Yeah.
That's pushing it a little bit. Kolo as a full defender now that he's about to come up to his 60th birthday, I think he is. So
I did look at United, but I didn't see any defence.
They've got one, and he's sat on the bench, and no one else can sit on the bench because when he's on it, it's like a banana-shaped bench as he bends it with his fat bottom.
God bless him. He was invincible, that man.
But they like big butts, and they cannot lie. Hey, go on, Gim. Take yourself off mute and get this thing going.
He's gone, that Gim.
Fantastic. Seeing as we've swerved Southampton quite fantastically, I think we now go to Danny for some Twitter and Facebook questions.
Nobody wants to talk about Southampton. I thought to say Podolski just obviously doesn't give a shit about anything, does he?
And Rosicky was shit.
I thought Rosicky was ring rusty. He was just you could see every night. He put a couple of great passes through, but I don't know.
Have you seen that Podolski tweets in Portuguese now as well?
Does he?
Yeah, all he puts are the same tweets, and well, obviously his PR does. But yeah, I find that a bit strange. I don't know. People say it's because he fell in love with Brazil during the World Cup, but yeah, it does seem pretty odd. But he is a bit of a nutter anyway, isn't he, old Poldy?
Well, he'll be tweeting in Mandarin next.
If he wants to go, because if people don't know, they speak Portuguese in Brazil rather than the rest of South America who speak Spanish. So maybe he's off to my club Corinthians and he can be a success there as, what was his name? Alexandre Pato was. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, questions from Twitter. Droog, who is at SRSK63. Does getting knocked out of the Capital One Cup significantly curtail the development of fringe and breakthrough players? I think it bloody does. Geoff?
Yeah, I would imagine it does. Obviously, because they're not getting the game time that they was going to get. You know, the game time in a big stadium and a decent crowd there. It's great for development and great for experience. But you know, it's one of those things. You've got to get on with it, haven't we? Really, it's not. It's not. You know, it's disappointing to go out, but if they're good enough, they'll get in. And I should imagine there'll be a couple of them that get a chance this year.
I think when we got knocked out last year, almost instantly, within a week, quite a few of the players started to go out on loan. Dom, do you think we're going to see that again this season?
Well, yeah, in January, I guess if there's players brought into the squad, especially if we do go and get some defensive cover, you might see a couple of players head out, maybe an Isaac Hayden or someone like that. He looked like he, could definitely take that next step, and it wouldn't be the worst idea to send someone like him out to get a little bit more experience. Or if Coquelin isn't getting the game time, he's not a young kid anymore. He might end up going out on loan and potentially going somewhere permanently. But yeah, that was the disappointing thing about going out of that cup for me, is that those kids don't seem to get that chance to shine, and it was the experienced players that let them down, essentially, wasn't it?
Andrew, I know you're not a chartered youth development expert, but could you see the likes of maybe Hayden, Bellerin, and maybe even Coquelin? Because Coquelin's getting gone a bit now, isn't he? I'm just going to click on this button and pretend I knew how old he was. Coquelin's 23, so those players can't be happy with playing under 21 football for the rest of the season, can they? So do you think they'll end up going out on loan sooner rather than later?
I'd like to see so. Yeah, I definitely want to see that, and even maybe Nabry as well.
Yeah, when he comes back from injury, because the rule is when you play in the under-21 league, you've obviously got to be under-21, but I think you can have 3 overage players playing in that. So straight away, Coquelin, he's on about 30, 40 grand a week, so he's got to be one that's going to be playing, and he's not going to be happy sitting there kicking his heels, and he's going to get no more League Cup games. I don't know what Wenger's attitude's going to be to FA Cup games, but I can't imagine him risking the FA Cup as holders by playing youth players. Do you think he will?
Probably not. I think it's one of those now. We're not in the Capital One Cup, so he's got a perfect opportunity to get a lot of Premiership experience or SPL, whatever league experience for a lot of these players. And I guess there's not much point rotating them into the first team too much. You don't want to kind of weaken the on-field products without being disrespectful to them. So I think it would be fantastic, and even maybe, just maybe, when Giroud comes back in January, let Sonogo go off on loan as well, because I think it would do his confidence a world of good to go out to a Celtic or someone for 5-6 months.
So, Gim, do you think this is going to be the sign that a few players are now definitely going to have to go out on loan and maybe be sold in January because they've got no other competition to play in?
Yeah, I think that there comes everyone's moaning about money. I think you've got to try and utilise the players the best you can, even if it's a case of sending them out on loan to put them in the shop window to try and get a shot of them in the summer.
Very true. Well, I'll stay with you, Gim, for this one, and then I'll go to Geoff on it because this is quite a good question, but it's a bit devious. Mark Troy 10, that's the number 10, says, opinions on Arsene Wenger and how the club is run. Is AFC getting comfy with being average? ? Could Piers be right? In brackets, fucking hope not. What do you think to that, Gim?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that Piers Morgan is never right and the bloke is a complete shit stain. But no, I think there is a certain emphasis on, and it goes down to the Capital One Cup as well, where the whole, we've got a short squad, so it's not necessarily a bad thing us being knocked out. Me, as a fan, I think when you get knocked out of any trophy, that is a bad day for the club, regardless of whatever trophy it is, whether it's Champions League or Capital One Cup. And I do think there's a sense of, maybe fourth is good enough. I mean, the ambitions for a season being finishing above Tottenham and getting Champions League football, for me as a fan, that's not good enough.
Geoff, what do you think about this? Are we comfy being average?
No, certainly not. I think that's that's a myth. We're FA Cup holders at the moment.
And Charity Shield.
Charity Shield holders, that's right. We were 7 points off the top last year. If we'd have had a bit of pace up top, I think we would have won the league. A lot of pundits have said exactly the same thing, because We had a great time, a long time at the top of the league. We were just missed out really at the end of it. But no, well, you see Arsenal. You heard the financial stats from Andrew earlier on. Arsenal are moving along really nicely. I think that's just a fallacy and it's ridiculous. And you get these negative fans all the time, and they just want to just speak about all this rubbish that they keep on coming out with. Arsenal moving on, and 2015, will be a time when we can really compete. I know we say, yeah, it's one more year, but we're not that club that we can't just, we're not going to be financially doped, so we've got to make our way and do the best we can. And I think next year we'll be really pushing on, and you'll see us crack right on.
I remember the first time you did a podcast with us back on the old Steve Spald days, back in 2012 we had you on, and you said, everybody, you wait for 2015, you will see.
Yeah.
And I'm going to dread the day if you're... Well, I like it if you're right, but then
Wouldn't it be great?
you're going to be even more of a bleeding big head than you are already. If you're right, you're just going to have Geoff Knows t-shirts handed out to everybody who doesn't agree with you. Right, rather than asking everybody the same question over and over, I'll just go to a different question now for Dom and Andrew. Do you think Hayden is a legitimate fourth choice centre back, Dom?
He has to be.
Oh, and that is from Graphic Arsenal, who also does a half decent blog. So go on.
As it stands, he has to be. There's no other choice. Monreal supposedly our fourth choice centre back, and he's out for a month. So,
and he's only ever played there twice.
Yeah, by default, I'd definitely take Isaac Hayden over Monreal, regardless of whether Monreal's fit in that position.
So you don't think
he's
it's
been playing his football there, but I mean, look, I think the reason that I was disappointed with the transfer window is because a club of Arsenal's stature, for me personally, I think that. All I expect is I don't expect trophies. It's not an expectation that I have every single year. I know that you don't fluke one. They're bloody hard to win. Any trophy is really difficult to win. I just want us to compete. All I ask from the club is that we use our resources to the best of our ability and compete, and make sure that we go into the season as strong as possible to make sure we can compete on all fronts as much as possible. And selling Vermaelen, Ignacy Miguel, and loaning out Jenkinson and only bringing in Callum Chambers, I just don't think that that's happened, and that's where I'm disappointed, especially with the defensive side of our team, and I think it's going to cost us before we've started. So as far as the Isaac Hayden question goes, there's no choice. He's got to be our fourth choice at the moment because of the transfer window that we had.
Okay, Andrew, what's your view on Hayden becoming a legitimate fourth choice centre-back, or is it more of a case of we've got no choice?
Yeah, I think, pretty much kind of the short answer is just what you said. It's what we've got. We've got to go with it. It looks like he's got quite a bit of potential. He could be, a future good defender for us, or he could be another Kyle Bartley. I think, we can't write him off just yet, but hopefully he'll go out and get some experience elsewhere. I hope, as a centre back, you're not going to learn on the bench. So if he wants to go in January, I think Arsene Wenger should allow him to. On loan, that is, not fully. And then I'd like to see, someone else come in the window and give Hayden, time. I think defenders don't really start to reach their peak. You don't, as a defender, a lot of the game is around, especially centre-backs, is about understanding the game, reading the opposition, movement of the ball, movement off the ball, players running in behind you. You don't get that into your latter years. So if we want to bring in, more of a veteran player to cover, whilst giving Hayden the years to develop, I'd be very comfortable with that situation. But echoing what the others says, I don't think he's ready yet to be kind of maybe the fourth choice. I know the exception to the rule was Tony Adams at his age. He was obviously captain at that age. But he clearly know Tony Adams. No disrespect to him, but Tony Adams was God. And then just quickly on to what Geoff was saying. I think in conjunction with Dom, people can make their opinions on what Arsenal do in the transfer window, whether we show enough ambition, whether we use our resources or not. But I think for people to question whether Wenger is happy with not moving forward, I think is, that's the one thing you can't question. Arsene Wenger is so hungry to win. You see how gutted he is when we lose. There's no doubt in my mind that he's not happy with us, not moving forward. I guess that's my kind of little summary.
Very good. Right. So this one is from Hamza, who is at Gooner Writer. Was it a coincidence that we played our best game of the season without Sanchez? Are we changing too much to suit him, Geoff?
I don't think we're changing too much to suit him, but I think we when he was playing, we was definitely unbalanced. We've seen that in the 3 or 4 games that it started in. But I think so. He's reverted back a little bit to type. This is obviously only my opinion. I don't know. I think he's reverted back to type, and he's give us the balance again now, Wenger. And he'll slowly he'll put him in. Like I say, he's going to rotate anyway. But he'll put him in, and I mean, I think he's a fantastic player, Sanchez. You can see it. I love it. I'd like to see. I'd like to see him and can you imagine him and Welbeck up top? Just rummaging around them defenders because they're both really they close down. The pressing is fantastic, and those two up top, at the top end of the field, chasing after defenders and fullbacks would be fantastic to see. I don't know whether it'll happen though, but no, he'll be all right, Sanchez. I'm sure.
What do you think to that, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with Geoff. I don't think it's necessarily because Sanchez didn't play. I think a lot of it comes down to we've just come off an absolute walloping from Dortmund. Wenger's clearly reshaped the team to a more of a 4-2-3-1. We've put Özil in the middle in his best position. Danny Welbeck making runs off of him and Ramsey having a blinder. For me, that was the reason why we played so well. I think, Sanchez presses so high up the field. He hurries the teams. His performance against Man City was one of the best on the pitch. So for me, it's not a case of because Sanchez did or didn't play. It was, minor, intricate, tactical changes to the team, along with Welbeck's confidence and his partnership with Özil, which really guided us forward.
You can see he's come from Barcelona because you see in some of them games he's really pressing quick, isn't he? And then all of a sudden he's looking behind him, thinking he's got them 2 or 3 players to come in behind him and press at the same time. But Arsenal don't do that, do they? Whereas at Barcelona, everyone used to just press the ball really, really high up the pitch, and you see it in a couple of games. He's looking around, thinking, "Well, where is everyone?" You know what I mean?
But do you see the work rate of him against Southampton, Geoff?
Oh, he's a busy boy.
Oh my God! You can just tell the passion that he shows when he's on the ball. If he loses the ball, he'll chase back, 40 or 50 yards to try and get it back. He's just everywhere. I think you're really starting to see the best of Sanchez now, and I think it's 32, 35 million for me. He's the signing of the summer.
There you go, Dom. As you're in Australia and you see everything upside down, what do you think to that?
I love the little man. I think he's fantastic. He brings something that we don't really have. He can run at players, but he's also got such good skills with his feet that he can run around players too and take people on, which is something that we've probably missed a little bit. What's he scored 3 goals and an assist in his game so far? He's flying. I don't really see that. It definitely wasn't that Sanchez didn't play that was the reason that we did so well against Aston Villa. Like Andrew said, it was more so down to the formation, not having the 4-1-4-1 with Ozil out on the left and Ramsey playing more of a box-to-box role and having Ozil through the middle up top, where I think most of the damage was done, because if Sanchez had played that game, I still think we would have won 3-0.
Just puts to shame the contrast in how hard Sanchez works and how less of a fuck Podolski gives. If Podolski gave 10% of what Sanchez does, maybe Wenger would give him more chances in the team. But as being ABW's number one Podolski fan, I've handed in my resignation to the Polski Supporters Club, and he can go fuck himself, because he just doesn't. He couldn't give less of a shit if he tried, and I'm absolutely gutted to say that. I've taken no end of grief over the years for backing him, but after that display the other night, he should never play a game again. So, right, that's enough of me going on about that. Right, now that one more question from Twitter, then I'll do a few Facebook ones. Right, this is one I just want a one answer question from all of you. This is from Mark Gooner, who is at the 37 mark. Who will be top striker this season, Welbeck or Falcao? Wenger has whenever I read it, Wenger has 173 roughly in the Arsenal kitty. So I think the question he's asking is, who's going to be top goal scorer in the Premier League this season out of those two? Geoff?
Yeah, I honestly think Danny Welbeck's going to score more goals. He's used to the Premier League. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He's going to get a lot of chances. He could have had 4 or 5 already, isn't he? In the games he's played, he'd missed a couple, hasn't he? So, and he's going to find it hard. Falcao's going to find it hard to adapt. You saw that against Leicester the other day. Put a fantastic ball in for the other fella's goal, but after that, he looks a little bit injured to me still. I don't know whether Dom can. I've had knee injuries. and he looks like he's not turning the right way. He looks a little bit buckled. He looks as if as if he's ready to wince. Maybe that's psychological. I don't know, Dom. What do you say about that? You see what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, he's got the same injury that Theo did, but he's come back a little bit earlier, where your straight line speed's never an issue when you're coming back from that injury. It's your sideways movement and cutting and changing direction quickly. So it's a confidence thing, absolutely.
Andrew, you get extra Tesco's club card points if you could answer that in one word.
Falcao.
Excellent. Gimli?
Welbeck.
Hey, that's what I like to see, people listening to the fucking rules. Right, okay. Little note now, we've got some questions from Facebook, which is run by the lovely Jason and the delightful Chris. First thing Jason has insisted I mention is Duncan Rowe is our competition winner, and the book, which is the signed Sol Campbell autobiography that our very own Andrew. Say hello, Andrew.
Hello, Duncan. Congratulations.
Yeah, the book's on its. Are you posting him the book?
I will. It will be coming from the Canary Wharf branch of Her Majesty's Post Office.
Hey, lovely jubbly. So it's probably going to get nicked then. So, on to some Facebook questions. How many can I do, Mr. Gimli?
As many as you want.
Okay, right. And Dom's got 21 minutes. You've got 21 minutes to go. We've got 21 minutes to go. No. It's Frederick Darnell, our favourite person from that part of the world. What did you think of the youngsters on the midweek game? Is Hayden and Cock Cock isn't a youngster. Good enough to be back up in our defence from what you've seen? Well, we think Hayden is, if he gets enough game time. What does everyone think of Coquelin? Does he have a future at the club? We go, yes or no, Geoff?
No.
It sounds like you've been drowned. No. Well, Andrew, yes or no? Hayden. I mean, Coquelin, has he got a future at the club?
No.
Dom?
No.
Gimli?
No.
Danny, not a fucking chance. Oh, here we go, from Ian Culverhouse, who was, that the ZLM song. He is the man who did the ZLM song for us. No. Walcott is due back this week. Where will he fit in? Well, we've just broke the news, Ian, that he's not back due this week because there's changed. It's now been put back to the end of October. But I think the question should be when he does come back, where do you think he's going to fit in? I personally think he's going to be playing right wing. Geoff, where do you think he's going to be playing, if at all?
Yeah, right wing, definitely.
Andrew?
Right wing, and the fact that his recovery's gone back only vindicates my decision to create You Mend, We Spend, I say.
And Dom?
Definitely on the right wing.
Mr. Gimli, do you concur?
No, I concur. However, I do think when he was playing last season, we did see some lovely link-up play between Özil and Walcott when he was through the middle. So I wouldn't necessarily rule him out completely playing in that striking role.
Well, I'm glad you concur because it's almost concur season. Remember, that keeps the spiders away, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, here we go. The world's longest question from Andrew Taylor. This is why I hate Facebook questions. Do you think all the analysis and debating the finances of the club and rival clubs is good for the game? Seems to me we're now more concerned with being able to afford players and their wages, and we're getting away from what football is really about. Undoubtedly, money is a huge part of the modern game, but surely it's not the be-all and end-all of everything.
Can I take that one?
No, Geoff. Go on, Gim.
No.
No, the power went to my head. I thought it was a little Gimli, but I'm not. Go on in, Gim. What do you think?
I've already answered it. No.
Well, fuck you then, Geoff.
No.
Good, you two right. You've gone tonight. It's all podcasted out.
I'm multitasking here. I'm not very good at that.
Oh, you're not making.
in the red zone.
Are you making soup again?
I'm sending an email trying to take a few quid off someone.
Hey.
Make money.
Oh, good. I shall keep the questions to you as yes or no. Go on, Don. What do you think to that?
It depends what you get out of football. I mean, it's completely dependent up to the individual. For me, I don't spend too much energy worrying about that kind of thing because to me the joy comes from watching the boys play on the pitch. So no one's forcing you to read about the financial stuff or to hear about it. So
basically you're saying Andrew should shut the fuck up.
If you want to care about it, care about it. If you don't, then don't. No one's forcing you to do either.
So on the yin of that yang, Andrew, do you give a fuck about injuries?
You bunch of shit munchers. No, you're
Oh,
right. You don't have to. You don't have to enjoy the finance side. Everyone's got their own, peculiarities, what they like. Just like people don't have to, care about the stuff in the program. I guess about what they're doing in the community, or what kind of what the foundation's doing, or even the history of the club. Everyone likes different things. For me, I think a lot of fans. I think nowadays are taking a lot more. I think as football evolves into kind of a bit more of a bit away from the kind of the community, this kind of I guess community asset to a business. A lot more fans are standing up just because various it's an increase in like the various number of stakeholders of football, and kind of the effects it has on clubs. So, we've seen a lot of clubs now which can be affected by things like FFP, and clubs which are having price ticket rises going through the roof, or clubs not investing in players because at Man U their owners have bought them out with leverage debt, and so it affects what's happening on the pitch. And so I can understand why a lot of modern football fans are standing up and taking a lot more interest in the financial element. I know it's not the be all and end all, and it's not the beautiful game and the Corinthian spirit of the game, but I think there is growing interest in it just because it's having more and more effect on the game as undoubtedly the business becomes far more globalized, and far more people become involved with a lot more shadier practices.
well, I think you have to look back at 20 years ago. All you had was shoot, match, 90 minutes, and once a month 4-4-2, and then you're not going to get an entire article there every month going into detail about each club's finances. The only way you'd ever get any of those is if you went to Company's House or something like that, where you could go and get the details if they were published. Is it Company's House?
Why would I want to go to Vincent Kompany's house?
Fuck knows. So my point is, back then you only had one bit in the newspapers for most people, if you're like me and you bought all the football magazines. But now you've got the internet. Every single thing, whether it be the size socks they're going to do, what colour the toilet seats are, every aspect of every club is gone into in the finite detail, because people are always constantly trying to find new things to write about. And I personally think that people knowing about the finances about a club is massively important and interesting, because that means they can't try and get away with the shit that they're trying to get away with this week, allegedly.
The thing is, I think you put all that on the internet and you have everyday people thinking they're financial analysts.
I mean, I think if you look at people like the kind of some of the senior people in the Arsenal Supporters Trust, for example, that there's a huge I mean, Geoff, we've been to several meetings together. There's a lot of people who take a lot of interest and passion in kind of looking into detail into just not just the accounts, but kind of the corporate strategy, the decisions made by the club, and not because they want to be seen as kind of these know-it-alls or whatever, or quite a lot of people in the AST on the board aren't even on Twitter, and people like Simon Hill, who's been in accountancy for 20 plus years, very intelligent guys who just I think have a real passion and love for the club. And as you say, Danny, they want to be sure that when they do try and lobby for things to improve things for the club. So improving the service of e-ticketing for the club. The AST have been calling for making the exchange service more readily available, and and stuff like campaigning for cheap tickets in the Carling Cup game, bringing back seating at junior games. A lot of that's a lot of those kind of custodianship ideas lobbied for by the fans comes on the back of people who are more interested in kind of the business side of the game. Looking at making things like Arsenal games more easily viewable on Arsenal.com, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's because a lot of people they do try and look at the bigger picture. Although from the same angle, back to the core question, I completely understand why some people simply wouldn't give a fuck. They just want to watch match of the day and enjoy the team, and completely understand that point of view. But I do also think it is important that there is an element of the fan base or some certain people that will look into the in-depth element, and we see that with the Arsenal Supporters Trust and other Arsenal unions, because it ultimately gives the fans a lot more understanding of the day-to-day practices, and how we can help give feedback and work with the club in those kinds of aspects, especially around stuff like in the stadium environment, atmosphere, ticketing, all that kind of stuff. And that comes, as I say, just from I think people having a bigger interest in the club.
Oh, I've never met someone that runs a company that tells the truth when they put their accounts in. Anyway, to be perfectly honest with you, so
Did you still only earn $5,000 last year, Geoff?
Yeah, of course. If I earn £5,000,
Did you get that food parcel I sent you?
I run two small businesses, and they're lucky to get anything from me, mate. Trust me.
I know my mate's an electrician, old sexy Frank, and he's lucky if he's got enough money to pay to heat the swimming pool in his new extension. Bless his socks.
How much do you pay yourself in advisory, Geoff?
3 million standard
About-
rate.
About £6.50, I think it was the last time I looked, Andrew. To be honest with you, and funny enough, I've got a pool in my garden as well, Danny. So that's got to get heated.
Yeah, I saw the picture of you mowing your garden. Jeez, it'd be easier and quicker to mow Ashburton, wouldn't it? It looked like Ashburton with trees. That's all I'm going to say. He's not doing bad. Old Jeff's not doing bad.
And I'm doing that on a little small. It's not old, but it's only a small. I've got to upgrade it. It's a small ride-on mower, and it takes a long time to do it, mate.
Well, if you ever want it concreted over with slabs and stolen concrete, you let Gimli
no,
know.
not
He'll
for me,
sort
mate.
you right out when you give him
Yeah,
all you want, all from the council. I mean, Style Council. Right, talking about that people moan too much about money. Next question from Abdul Ahad Jawed. Oh, Jesus. From that, I make the word cucumber sausage. No, I don't. Custard. Oh, no, I give up. Question. If a bit more money is spent and we go on to win the Premier League, Champions League, does that not result in better revenues, sponsorship bonuses, money from the league, etc.? Will that not make us more financially secure as well? Man United have the commercial success due to their success on the pitch. Thoughts? Suppose we better go to Gimli because he probably didn't understand the question. More money, good or bad?
Oh, good. More money the better. Bring it on. As long as they invest it in the right places and in the team.
That'd be free season tickets to Gingers and Dwarfs, then you're right in there.
Oh, shut up.
Oi.
Not unless they give free tickets out to fat people and then you're away.
I'll have you know, this season, this week, I rang up Arsenal and got my purple membership form, and they're going to be whisking it out to me post-haste, if not quicker. So that means I will be down there at some games this season. But the only bad thing is, the only person I can get to drive me down there is a Spurs season ticket holder, Fat Lee.
I'll drive you down.
Yeah, well, you're going to drive all the way from fucking Wales to drive me down to the game?
Yep.
Well, you might have
I thought we was going to try and curb on the spending on this sorry, what am I talking about? On the swearing on this podcast.
Says he. I nearly spat my coffee out today when I heard you swearing at poor old...
Jeff, I can't do it. Daddy's too much of a cunt.
Even Andrew, we've corrupted Andrew, mate. I mean, he doesn't look like he swears for anything at all.
One of Eton's finest is now a potty mouth trollop like the rest of us. Has anybody got any things they think about that? Who listens to the question?
I think he's spot on, the fella.
Yeah.
You know, it is about success. Arsenal, you know what, we're going to really crack on. If we can win a Champions League or a Premier League, the commercial revenue that will come in from that will be fantastic, and we can crack on again. You know, that's what we do need. It's okay, the FA Cup, it's a bit of success, and you know you'll get noticed by it. But the biggies are the Champions League and the Premier League. You've already seen it. I mean, United have just gone clear with all their success and their two Champions Leagues. That's what does it. That big European trophy. If you can get that in the bank, then you really are rolling. And Arsenal are such an attractive club. Everything about it, the way they're run, the manager is so it's everything is a fantastic package. It's in the best city in the world, maybe. We just need to get that big trophy to get us, really push us up there. It's a great point the lad makes.
Oh, well done.
What I would particularly say on that, I think one thing what kind of was in the question is, I think, correct me if I'm being a cockmuncher and I'm wrong. He said that you spend more on players, right, and that will bring it. So, I mean, Geoff and you guys are absolutely bang on. If we do win, big trophies and we do win things, obviously that's where we're going to develop the brand, and that's where we're going to get the kind of the revenue. Well, that's going to help us get those revenues Man U get. But I think that we should, also make the point that obviously if you do spend, there is a correlation that it'll help you and you're more likely to win things. But it's not a guarantee. I think, if you look in the last decade, we've spent less. Our net spend is, we've spent less money than QPR, Tottenham, Stoke, Sunderland, Villa, Liverpool. And we've been maybe not Liverpool, but we've been more successful than all of those teams. And they've got far smaller revenue.
Andrew, if we spend, would you spend a bit more?
I won't spend until they start mending.
I tell you boys are awful. If I didn't know this lot on the pod, I would think you're being bullies. Now stop it, behave yourselves. Dom, the voice of sanity, what do you reckon to any of that? And please don't join in with these butter monkeys. A butter monkey? I don't even know what a butter monkey is.
You've lost the plot too.
Oh dear.
Must be all those anti-inflammatories you're back on.
I'll tell you what, I'm breakdancing here. I'm not giving it. I'm giving it like, hey, Ashley. The first three, that's where they went until I read the packet properly.
Shelved them. Gimli knows.
Oh yes.
I think I think Andrew's spot on. You can, if it was a guarantee of, okay, look, go out and spend 100 million on players and you're guaranteed to win the Champions League and Premier League, then you do it every day of the week. But unfortunately, that's not really how the game works. And we've seen Man City go and spunk nigh on $500 million over the last few years, and they've not even come close to winning the Champions League. So if it was a guarantee, you'd go and do it every day of the week. But unfortunately, we don't really have that spending power, regardless of what people try to say. It's not going to happen. We're not going to be a team that goes out and spends 150 in a transfer window. We've got to do it a bit differently, and like Geoff says, it's going to take a little bit longer, the process. So if it can happen, obviously, things go gangbusters. I know that there's a lot of Liverpool fans out here in Australia, and that's just because of their success in the 80s, and that's still
or they're on the
keeping
run.
them. Yeah, well, that's true, but that's just keeping them. It's keeping their overseas fan base topped up, but they're also. Liverpool have been really good when it comes to the overseas trips, and that's something that I've sort of thought of bringing up before, where people have said, why are we going overseas and doing these overseas tours? We should be concentrating on getting a good pre-season and getting the players fit. But if you want Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez on your team, you need to have that commercial revenue from overseas now. You've got to compete on a global market, not just in the UK.
Okay, right. Well, I've been told to get the fuck on with it. Jeez, disgusting. One last, I think, a good question from Stan the Man. This is off of Facebook. What did you think of the senior players that faced Southampton? Did those fringe players like Poldy, Ox, Rosicky, etc., did they do enough to warrant more games, or is it time to give those guys the heave-ho and send them on their way? Gim.
Podolski, I think Rosicky just had a bad game. I think that's what you've got to put it down to. For me, I thought Chamberlain was all right. I thought, Jack was fine in places, not as standout as he normally is. But out of all of them, Podolski's got to be sold. Got to go in January.
Or get a good beating.
Yes.
Jeff.
A little bit harsh, I think, on the boys. I mean, I was disappointed with them. They should have stepped up a little bit, like I said earlier on. But it must be difficult for them because we've got so many midfield players now that are all fighting for the same kind of positions. It's difficult for them. But I was disappointed with the senior players, like I said earlier on. So he's right. He's what he's saying is right.
Dom.
I concur.
Good. And finally, Andrew. And then after that, Andrew, if you can seamlessly hand it back to Gimli to get this Gooner love train back on track.
I think Stan the Man, Chet and Lamb. No. Firstly, getting rid of Rosicky and Chamberlain after a poor game against Southampton, was that the question? Definitely not. Podolski, completely different. His head's already moved potentially, and he's in. I think at next summer it'll be the start of the last year of his contract. So he'll be going. He'll be available to go quite cheap.
Do you think maybe he's checking the conversion rate of the pound to the Turkish lira?
Maybe.
Do they use that in Turkey, or are they on euro? Who knows?
No, lira. No, they're on lira.
Are they?
Yeah. Yep,
See,
yep.
I know my shit. Go on, Andrew. Hand it back to Gimli as if it was seamless.
With Gooner Train Love.
Yes, Gooner Love Train. Choo woo, mother truckers. Because people hate that shit.
Back yet?
Gim.
What's he doing? Absolutely useless.
Gim's just been caught in first class with a second-class ticket, so he's been kicked off.
Him and his shitty Welsh internet, right? As he's not here to shout at me to hurry up, let me know when he's back. Go back to some more Facebook questions. From Bip Lab Roy says, why both Ox and Joel aren't they getting more chances? I think they need to prove their worth. What do you think of that, Geoff?
Joel.
Yeah. He's had 17 minutes for Everton in the Premier League, didn't he? And that was about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's ready. It's a big season for Joel, isn't it? He's got to do it this year. He's been out on loan for 4 or 5 years, or however long it's been. Seems like it's been forever.
3.
But 3 years, I beg your pardon. Then, but he'll get game time, but it's difficult for him. It's a big adaptation at the Premier League, as we've spoken about before. He'll be all right, though. I think he's just going to get some minutes here and there, and he's got to produce in that time. Otherwise, he's got some big players in front of him. That is where the problem lies.
Yeah, how about you? Have you got to go yet, Dom? It's 27 minutes past over here. Have you got 3 minutes? Is that it? And then
I've
got
a few minutes.
Okay.
No, I agree with Geoff. I think the biggest problem is the competition that he faces in the positions that he plays. So if he was a defender, he'd be playing every week. He'd be fine. But at the moment, and with Walcott coming back as well, I think he's going to find his time pretty limited.
Oh, lovely. Andrew?
Sorry, I wasn't even paying attention, and I was getting too excited about the North London derby on the weekend, and I've just been thinking about the North London derby for the last 2 minutes. So,
Okay.
with Joel Campbell, yeah, let's play him. If you're asking about Joel Campbell,
Yeah.
I think he needs some game time, and I'd like to see him integrated into the first team a little bit more.
Do you think his head's in the right place after having such a great season with Olympiacos and then having such a great World Cup to then come back and get 17 minutes in the Premier League and that's it so far? Or do you think he's got to just earn his place?
Well, I don't know if he doesn't understand English or whether my accent is just incomprehensible. But I said to him the other day that it's great to see him finally back in the team. Against Man City at half time, I saw him in the club lounge, and he kind of just nodded at me with like a scared look. So maybe he didn't understand me, or maybe he was maybe he can't wait to get away. It can't be easy for him. He's been told they want him back at the club now. And he's come back rather than going back out on loan. But ultimately, Arsenal Football Club, we can't guarantee first team football to every single player, in the squad. They're going to have to fight for their competition, and he's got true, genuine, world class players ahead of him at the minute, like Sanchez. Walcott. I'm not sure if he's world class, but he's obviously very, very established in quality. So if Campbell's definitely got the ability to step up and play, get some game time. Hopefully, Wenger will integrate him in more and he'll react positively. And if he doesn't, then, is he really the kind of player we want around the squad, given, the movement we've made to, kind of harmonise the squad in recent years?
Okay, right. Then after Andrew writing in the group, Gim down, repeat, Gim down. Gim, are you back up?
I am back up and I am here.
Back in your warm, furry hands. There we go.
With a real Gim Shady, please stand up.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, I am standing.
Are you? Oh, yeah,
Yes.
of course you are. You're just quite small.
Yes.
All I see is this ginger fur above my table.
We'll end this podcast, as we normally do, with predictions and shout-outs. So if I could have some predictions for the North London derby, please, Danny.
I reckon it's going to be a bit of a slobber knocker. I say 5-3.
Okay.
And I think the first goal scorer, it's got to be Ozil, isn't it?
Okay.
Ozil as in Wurzel.
Geoff?
Well, by all accounts, the bookies know normally what the scores are going to be, and so we're in front with the bookies apparently. So I reckon, I fancy we're going to be comfortable. It'd be a little bit hairy at the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but once it all settles down, I think we'll be too dominant for Tottenham, too powerful, and we'll win 2-0. And I'm going to go for Danny Welbeck. I think he's going to play.
Okay. Dom?
I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. It wouldn't surprise me if there's not too many goals scored at all, but just for fun, I'll go 3-1 with Welbeck.
Okay. Andrew?
I'm going to go 3-0 with Aaron Ramsey.
Wow. And I'm not John Watson, but I'm going to go for 4-2 Alexis. And we'll finish it off with some shout-outs, and we'll go back to front. Andrew, your shout-out, please.
My shout out is to a friend of mine, Giles, who is at Rambling Gooner. Last night he put on a delectable pod with Mo and Geoff, who I also want to just compliment. I think even though I've been joking a lot tonight, both of the guys put on a very articulate debate last night, very eloquently put. It didn't get personal, and both guys raised their points of view. And I think for Giles to host it the way he did and to get that kind of that prime time boxing match into our ears like he did, he deserves a bit of credit, and I can't wait for the rematch.
Giles, a lovely, lovely fella. Dom?
I've just been looking through my timeline. Someone that's just tweeted that's pretty excited to hear the pod this week. Kelly Maher at Kelly_MAHER. So, Kelly, it should be out for you soon once Danny sorts it all out and presses some buttons and does some things.
She's in Canada, isn't she?
She is.
Yeah, we know her. Cheeky monkey. Hello.
Very good. So,
Okay.
And on that note, boys, I'm going to sneak off. So, have a fun little chat.
See you
God
later,
bless you,
Dom.
Dom. God bless you, Dom.
Cheers, Dom.
All right, boys.
Bonjour.
No problem.
Be good.
Jeff?
I like Kelly's necklace.
Gimli, you want my shout out, no doubt, do you?
Yes, please.
Well, I think it's only fair that I give it to the chap who's most probably sitting at home there, battered and bruised and being pampered by his mum. And that would be Arsenal Mo 8, I think his handle is, and that is a chap that we had a podcast with last night. But he's been ripped up, so I should imagine he needs a little bit of support. So he's got my shout out tonight. Good luck to him.
And I should say that we've got that podcast coming next week.
That should be good.
We certainly
Can we not do that like a live thing? Because that would be interesting.
Certainly can. Yeah. Oh, hashtag ABW Radio Live. Would love that. That's up to you
visitors.
Though. Because only people who can do their stuff without having it to be edited, do their stuff edited, can go on there.
Yeah, we can just run through it, mate. It'll be all right.
We'll sort it closer to the time, because I hear Claude wants to come on because he's got a few issues as well with you, Geoff.
Claude, anytime, no problem. Bring your dinner.
Oh, he loves a bit of the old battling, does old Geoff.
He does. Danny, and finally you.
Fine, nearly messed this up because Twitter been the pile of shit that it is, and whenever you try and find someone who's tweeted you couldn't. Finally managed to see my shout out. It goes to someone who was kind enough to put his name phonetically. J-A, how would you say that? Ja or Jar or Ja? Jahanzeb. And his surname is Shaheen. There you go. If only his name was Trevor Smith, it would be a lot easier. Been talking to him on Twitter today. Half decent bloke. He says hello, and he quite like it, and he loves the podcast, which is always a good thing to say if you're going to creep for a shout and a gentleman's nod.
Any idea? What's the score lines? I mean, I've not visited the predictions league lately. Who's on top?
Last time I heard, I was top.
No, he was nearly top, but then the listeners I forgot to do the listeners thing this week, but luckily the Arsenal graphics managed to do a blog that day. He went back and had a look at his blog and he gave me proof, and so he predicted 2-1 to Southampton, and so they're top of the league with 9 points. I haven't added up those points yet, but they're the top of the league because they were 2 points clear, and now I think they're 4 points clear at the top. So the listeners, they know their shit.
It's a mistake. I was top 3 weeks ago.
Bottom of the league is guess who?
It can only be the big GFP.
You're not wrong.
You're always bottom of the league. You just how come? What's happened? You've just gone the top, mate.
I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. That's it. I picked 5-3, didn't I, for Spurs? That's the fuck why.
And I should feel that we should say, because I'm not above begging for votes. As I said on my Twitter account this week, we are in the FBAs, an awards which we finished second in last year, against every single other footballing podcast out there. So you'll see things from our podcast account this week, showing you how to vote, and I hope there's a link going up on the website that you can click on and just automatically vote for us. But that is in the pipeline as well, and my shout out goes to a fella called at A_N_D_R_E_H. I'm not even going to put it together, but he always gets involved in the podcast.
Oh, his avatar's with a picture of someone with a bag on their head, isn't it?
Yes, I
always worries me.
Yeah, it looks like a guy getting the electric
Spider-Man or
some old shit.
Well, no, Batman, I think, isn't it? It's one of the Batman films.
But either way, he's just a bloody nice fella. Right, so
did Andrew do a shout?
I gave a shout to Giles and then subsequently Geoff and Mo.
Oh dear, I was worrying there. Go on, Gim, pretend I didn't say anything.
Okay, so that was a Bergkamp Wonderland podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and keep it Arsenal. Good night.
Honk honk, cheeky monkeys.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to listen to ABW Live half hour after the Spurs game. Woohoo!